Hello, you absolute legends. Just over 2 years ago, in June of 2024, the YouTuber Coffeezilla was sued by Logan Paul for defamation. The lawsuit arose from claims from Coffeezilla that Logan Paul had scammed his audience out of millions of dollars with his CryptoZoo game that never eventuated. Coffeezilla is one of my favorite YouTubers who does amazing work in investigating all sorts of scams, especially in the crypto space, so I was heavily invested in the outcome of this lawsuit. In my opinion, the lawsuit was terrible. Logan Paul is a public figure, which means that any defamation claim he brings forth must establish actual malice, meaning that Coffeezilla would have had to have either known that what he said was not true, or at least entertained serious doubts. And I just do not get the impression that Coffeezilla would have knowingly lied when he accused Logan of perpetrating a scam. Not only do I think that Coffeezilla is not a dishonest person, but he even clearly outlined the reasons behind his claims in multiple videos. I also think that the conclusions Coffeezilla came to were reasonable given the evidence. So for him to be sued was a huge injustice. Logan Paul has an estimated net worth of $150 million. Getting sued by someone with this much money is extremely devastating financially, and based on the docket of the lawsuit and the amount of filings, this easily cost Coffeezilla hundreds of thousands of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage for coming to reasonable conclusions. I fear that this might go to trial, as that's what Logan publicly claimed that he wanted.
This is why I brought it to court, because it was the only way to get the truth out there, not some manipulated, twisted version of the truth by a couple of content creators looking for clicks and trying to win over the court of public opinion. I'm going to try to win in court, and that's what I intend to do.
But fortunately for Coffeezilla, it appears as though the two parties have come to a settlement and the lawsuit is going to be dismissed. I believe that if the lawsuit did go to trial, Coffee would have won. But trial is extremely expensive, and avoiding it was certainly his best option. Even if he did win, he still would have lost. You don't get your money back in America when you defend a defamation claim. He may have earned some internet clout, but everyone has already made up their mind about Logan Paul. The outcome of the lawsuit would have likely changed nothing. Really, I'm just happy that Coffee doesn't have to endure this lawsuit hanging over his head any longer. And I'm happy that he no longer has to continue to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars just because Logan Paul is a bitch. But I do want to make something extremely clear. Even if you or I think Coffee was correct or justified in what he said, it was still extremely risky. And this lawsuit was the proof. If you make serious accusations against someone, especially someone with money, they can sue you, and there is absolutely nothing you can do to avoid losing a ton of money. And while this might seem obvious, I don't think people truly appreciate the full scope of the danger. Prefacing your claims with words like, "in my opinion," or even writing a disclaimer in your description saying that this is just your opinion will not save you. It certainly didn't save Coffee. This is something that even the most famous lawyer on YouTube doesn't seem to understand. Legal Eagle made a video about Coffee's lawsuit, and not only is it incredibly wrong, but it is also incredibly irresponsible and negligent. So today, I'm going to explain why Coffeezilla could not escape his lawsuit without suffering extreme loss, and why Legal Eagle's video regarding the lawsuit was very, very stupid. Now, legends, I'm going to give you 3 pieces of advice that are going to change your life forever. 1. Learn new skills. 2. Learn new skills. And 3. Learn new skills. You should always be learning new skills if you want more success, abundance, and fulfillment in life. And one of the best things you can learn in this day and age is to learn how to program. And that is why I am a huge fan of today's sponsor, Boot.dev. Boot.dev turns learning to program into a game, where you earn XP, gain levels, and complete quests. And there are tons of courses covering the most popular programming languages. So if you've ever considered being a software developer, which allows you to make a very decent amount of money, Boot.dev, in my opinion, is the easiest and most enjoyable way to do it. Getting a degree at university costs tens or maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars. But why do that when Boot.dev provides the best professor you could ever ask for, named Boots? So if you want a career in programming or just want to learn for fun or to keep your brain active, click my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen and use code CARLJOBS to get 25% off your entire first year on an annual plan. There is even a 30-day, no questions asked money back guarantee, so there really is no reason not to at least try it out. First, we need to re-establish the exact statements that Logan sued Coffee over. There was a tweet and 2 videos, which have since been deleted after the parties settled. But within those videos, Coffee made direct claims that Logan Paul scammed people, and the videos highlighted the fact that the amount of money that was extracted by Logan's alleged victims was in the millions.
6 months ago, I investigated CryptoZoo, a scam created by Logan Paul and a team of criminals, and a dude named Jeff, which ultimately resulted in millions of dollars being stolen from fans.
This is not a small accusation. According to the Texas Penal Code, which is the state where the lawsuit was filed, theft of more than $300,000 is a first-degree felony, and the punishment for a first-degree felony is no less than 5 years imprisonment and can go all the way up to 99 years. If it were true that Logan intentionally scammed his viewers out of millions of dollars, he would be facing years in prison. So when Coffee repeatedly says things like this,
Logan Paul is refunding people he scammed if they promise to stop suing him for the vastly larger amount he may owe them. And honestly, I'm conflicted because on the one hand, victims getting money is always great. And I'm proud that our investigation led to some real-world consequences. But I can't pretend that things are fixed or fine for people who entrusted me with their story when that's just not true. So here's the real, more complicated story in 3 parts: the refund offer, the zoo tokens, the lawsuit, starting with the most important part. And if you get one thing from this story, this should be it. These are the estimated damages in CryptoZoo, $18.5 million, which comes from a combination of ZooCoin and NFT sales.
this is extremely risky. Coffee directly says that Logan scammed people and that those people were victims. And then he immediately follows this by saying that the damages of the scam was $18 million. Now, I need to stress that Coffee may be correct in what he is saying, and I think he really believes that what he is saying is true. But the problem is that these accusations are so serious that if Logan wanted to sue Coffee, the cost of these statements would be extreme, and there was absolutely no way to avoid a long and drawn-out lawsuit if that's what Logan wanted, which is exactly what happened. And I need to explain where people seem to have the wrong idea. Listen to how Legal Eagle explains Coffee's statements.
Not to mention, this seems to be a classic opinion based on disclosed facts about the type of person that Paul is. In fact, they all seem to agree on the underlying facts that CryptoZoo was in fact a scam. The only difference is that Logan Paul is claiming that he was also a victim of bad developers as well, and Coffeezilla says that when you put your name on something and you run the whole project, the reputation is yours. Logan Paul doesn't like the implication, but you can't force your opinion onto someone else. In fact, Coffeezilla could probably write another tweet saying that Logan Paul is the type of person to sue you for defamation when you exercise your First Amendment rights.
Legal Eagle seems to be under the impression that these statements Coffee made were just his opinions. But this isn't how defamation works. Legal Eagle seems to be confused by the legal meaning of the word opinion, because it doesn't mean what he appears to think it means. In 1990, there was a very famous US Supreme Court ruling into the matter of Milkovich v. Lorraine Journal. The Lorraine Journal published a column implying that Milkovich had committed perjury. The trial court dismissed the lawsuit because it believed that Lorraine Journal's statements were protected opinion under the First Amendment. However, Milkovich appealed all the way up to the US Supreme Court, which reversed the trial court's dismissal and allowed the lawsuit to proceed. The important distinction that the Supreme Court made clear is that saying something is just your opinion does not protect you from a defamation claim if what your opinion is a statement of fact that can be verified. The Supreme Court stated in their opinion, if a speaker says, "In my opinion, John Jones is a liar," he implies a knowledge of facts which lead to the conclusion that Jones told an untruth. Even if the speaker states the facts upon which he bases his opinion, if those facts are either incorrect or incomplete, or if his assessment of them is erroneous, the statement may still imply a false assertion of fact. Simply couching such statements in terms of opinion does not dispel these implications, and the statement, "In my opinion, Jones is a liar," can cause just as much damage to reputation as the statement, "Jones is a liar." The Supreme Court held that it doesn't matter if the Lorraine Journal actually held the opinion that Milkovich committed perjury. The accusation of perjury itself is a crime that is susceptible to being proven true or false. And therefore, it is no longer just an opinion. It is a statement of fact. Therefore, the First Amendment protection that applies to opinions is not applicable. In the description of Coffey's videos, he placed a disclaimer saying, "This video is an opinion and in no way should be construed as statements of fact." And Coffey's legal team tried to use this disclaimer to argue that the video was just opinion and therefore should be protected speech. But the judge rejected this argument, stating, even if the disclaimers were more prominently on display, however, they would not materially change the factual nature of Coffey's assertions. Merely calling a factual assertion subjective cannot make it so. If it did, then no assertion, no matter how defamatory, would be actionable so long as the defamer labeled it subjective. Similarly, simply couching statements in terms of opinion cannot render an otherwise verifiable statement of fact into one that is not actionable. And the judge cited Milkovich. This entire notion that if you just say, "in my opinion," before accusing someone of a crime that you're going to be protected is completely false. It doesn't matter if it is your opinion. If your opinion is that someone committed a crime and you make that claim publicly, it is not protected speech. And legal eagles claim that accusations of criminal scams are protected under the First Amendment as long as they are your opinion is not only false, but it's dangerous. Because if people believe that, they will be a lot more loose with their words and may get into trouble. The reason it's so important to understand that serious accusations aren't opinions is because of how they play out in a lawsuit. If your claim really is an opinion in a legal sense and the court agrees, you can get a lawsuit dismissed very early. Normally, at the very start of a lawsuit, you can file a motion to dismiss. In that motion, you argue that your statement is protected opinion under the First Amendment, and if the judge concurs, the lawsuit could end right there. But if the judge finds that your statement is not just an opinion, that it can be verified, and that it is a statement of fact, the court will not dismiss the lawsuit. And now you're trapped in a legal battle that could take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to defend. Legal Eagle claims that Coffey is allowed to have the opinion that Logan is perpetrating a scam, which is obvious. You can have whatever opinion you want. It's the public statement that's the issue. And he also says that it's not dispositive that Merriam-Webster defines scam as a fraudulent or deceptive act of operation.
Moreover, the whole complaint basically admits that CryptoZoo was broken beyond belief, which most people would qualify as a scam, but Logan Paul just claims to be a victim of his own developers. Now, it's not dispositive, but Merriam-Webster defines a scam as a fraudulent or deceptive act or operation.
Dispositive means deciding. So Legal Eagle is arguing that just because Merriam-Webster says the word scam means a fraudulent act, that doesn't mean that when Coffey uses that word, he actually means that definition. Ironically, however, the judge in the case literally pointed to the Merriam-Webster definition as justification for why Coffey's statements were defamatory, saying, "The word scam meets the legal definition of defamatory, as it is reasonably capable of defamatory meaning in both its noun and verb forms. As a noun, scam means a fraudulent or deceptive act of operation, as per Merriam-Webster's dictionary." The judge also clarified all three of Coffey's statements were verifiable, i.e., sufficiently factual to be susceptible of being proven true or false, again citing Milkovich. Coffey accuses plaintiff of having orchestrated a scam through his CryptoZoo project. In other words, that plaintiff committed fraud. Seriously, on what planet is accusing someone of scamming their audience out of millions of dollars not defamatory? Of course it is. Arguing otherwise is ridiculous and delusional. Truth is a defense to a defamatory claim, but it doesn't make a statement not defamatory. So Coffey's statements can be defamatory in the sense that they damaged Logan's reputation, but they can also be true, which would be an affirmative defense and he would not be liable. But to argue that his statements would not damage Logan's reputation at all, however, is demented. Legal Eagle goes on to state that courts have held that using the word scam is not verifiable, but doesn't cite a single example of case law.
And while things that are labeled as opinion can sometimes give rise to defamation, they still need to be a verifiable fact. And there's actually case law applying the word scam in the context of a cryptocurrency scheme. And courts have decided that using the word scam in the context of a cryptocurrency scheme is generally not a verifiable fact that can be proved true or false. But even if you could, it would still qualify as an opinion.
This is purely a trust me bro statement. He also says that people use scam for different reasons, implying that it's not a criminal accusation.
And that makes sense. We call things scams all the time when there's an outcome that we don't necessarily like. Logan Paul asserts that you can only use the word scam to describe something where they intentionally intended something to steal money from someone, but that just doesn't jive with the regular definition of scam that we use all the time. Though it might actually apply in this case too. We don't know.
But obviously the context matters. If I say the current price of a McDonald's cheeseburger is a scam, which it totally is, the use of the word scam in that sentence is so vague that it is obviously opinion or hyperbole. The exact mechanism of the scam isn't explained, so it doesn't come across as a statement of fact. Likewise, if I simply called Logan Paul a scammer, that could also arguably fall into the realm of opinion, because I haven't specified what the scam was, who he scammed, how much money he scammed, and what the exact transaction was. But if I say Logan Paul scammed his audience out of this exact amount of money through this specific scheme, now that is a completely different story, because now each of those elements can be tested in court and proven true or false. And that is exactly what Coffeezilla did. Legal Eagle also bizarrely contradicts himself. Logan sued Coffee for defamation per se. The per se element is a more serious defamation qualifier where the statement is so defamatory that damages are presumed. This means that you don't even need to specifically plead special damages in your complaint, which Legal Eagle does correctly point out.
Now, Logan Paul alleges that Coffeezilla's tweet is libel per se. A defamation or libel per se describes statements which are considered to be so harmful on their face that the plaintiff doesn't need to prove special damages, that they can get by with basically no damages and still file suit.
But then 2 minutes later he goes out of his way to say that Logan Paul will find it difficult to prove damages.
And Logan Paul cites the mean tweets as proof that his reputation was ruined by Coffeezilla's scam comment, but number one, he would have a very hard time proving damages.
But that is the entire point of defamation per se. You don't need to prove damages. You might be able to get more damages if you can prove them, but you don't have to prove damages in a defamation per se claim to have your lawsuit survive. I am not going after Legal Eagle just for the sake of it here. He is seriously downplaying the risk of making these kinds of public statements. I agree totally with Legal Eagle that Logan's lawsuit was pathetic, performative, and a terrible thing to do to Coffee. But his legal analysis was really bad. This is genuinely irresponsible from a lawyer with so much reach. This video has 7 million views, and what he is saying is verifiably false. And I am particularly sensitive to downplaying the risk of getting sued because I have had first-hand experience. And incorrectly thinking that you have a defense that you don't actually have can be devastating. And ultimately, that's why accusations of crimes are so dangerous. Because 1, accusations of crimes are not protected opinion, despite what Legal Eagle incorrectly claims. Crimes, by their very nature, must be verifiable, or you could never be convicted of the crime. And 2, because accusations of criminal activity are defamatory per se, the plaintiff doesn't even need to demonstrate damages. And that is why Coffee only ever had 2 exit paths. One was to win at trial, which he probably would have, but that probably would have cost north of $1 million. Or he could have simply settled. And this is why I think Logan and Coffee finally settled now. As I said at the beginning of the video, I think if this went to trial, Coffeezilla would win. And I also believe that he would have deserved to have won. I think he would have had a very good chance of employing a successful truth defense, and at the very least, he would be able to show that he genuinely believed his statements were true. So this would have made establishing actual malice very difficult. And I have a hunch that Logan Paul believes this also. Despite what Logan publicly said, I don't think Logan really wanted a trial ever. There is literally a class action lawsuit still pending against Logan for CryptoZoo. It would be extremely difficult for Logan to convince a jury theory that Coffeezilla knew for sure that what he said was false when there is a class action lawsuit with 140 plaintiffs suing Logan over the exact same thing that Coffeezilla accused him of. Logan never stood a chance to win, but I don't think that was his motive. I believe that Logan knew that regardless of the merits of Coffeezilla's claims, he could still force him to incur hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees, and then right before trial, he could simply settle quietly. And if I were to guess, I would suggest that Logan may have been making an example out of Coffee and using this lawsuit to send a warning to every other content creator out there that he is willing to pull the trigger. And in his video announcing that he was being sued, that's essentially what Coffeezilla said.
So this defamation lawsuit feels frivolous even on the surface. But if you dig deeper, there's an even more compelling story, which I personally believe, where the goal is to crush new investigations while taking revenge on old ones. In this version, Logan might not even care about winning. Legal battles are expensive, and in the world of money, he's got me beat. So he can try to silence me by weaponizing the law. He can sue me for doing my job. He can sue me for asking questions, and he can sue me for asking for refunds. But it's going to backfire because I think it reveals Logan as a bully rather than someone who's truly sorry.
As per the joint stipulation of dismissal, each party is to bear their own attorney's fees and costs, likely over $1 million shifted into the pockets of the law firms, in exchange for an ungodly amount of stress for Coffeezilla over the past 2 years. Once again, the only real winners are the lawyers. I am truly relieved for Coffee that this ordeal is over, and I hope these settlement terms weren't too egregious. I really do not like Logan Paul, but I have to say that I'm glad that he at least agreed to end this, so I'm genuinely appreciative of that. I don't think all defamation claims are frivolous, but I think this one definitely was, and a frivolous lawsuit can still destroy your life. Luckily, this one ended relatively peacefully, but Coffee is a huge content creator with a lot of public support. For those smaller creators who still like to throw around serious accusations, just be careful. Thanks for watching, you legends. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video.